Okay, welcome back to the Jaguar build. I have been working on the front suspension, and we saw some of these pieces in the last video. Since then, I went ahead and made the front spindle here, or axle, whatever you want to call it, and I copied the dimensions from the kit piece because I figured worst case scenario, if I had to, I could just use the kit wheels. You take a look at the kit wheels, they're not terrible. I do plan on trying to make wheels out of metal with metal spokes. That's the plan. I've never done something like that before, so I don't know how it's going to turn out, but that's my plan. If it doesn't work, I can just use the kit wheels because, again, they're not bad. They're actually pretty good, in my opinion, for a kit wheel. So I can use that for that if I needed to. But again, you can see what I've got so far. The axle, I've got the linkage, well, not really linkage, but I've got the piece there that would be for the steering. I got a bolt that goes through there, bolting onto the axle, nut and a bolt through there, and then the steering linkage would go here. Now, as far as the steering linkage, I tried making one. It's not, it would work, but it's not nice. I'm going to try something different for those. I got a few other ideas for those, but obviously this is the other one. Everything's a little bit loose and floppy. I was kind of hoping things would have been tighter, but they're okay. They're fine. Now, the next thing I wanted to work on is the piece for the anti-sway bar, the roll bar, or the anti-roll bar, and that piece bolts on here. Remember, I'm keeping this long because the shock absorber goes there. But the anti-sway bar, there's a link rod that's going to go from here up to about here, and then that's going to connect to the anti-roll bar. So just looking at pictures online, I started machining that piece, and right now this is rather oversized, obviously. This is going to be cut off right about there, and I'll file that round. And then same thing here, that'll get cut off and filed round. But that bar will bolt on there, and then the anti-sway bar, roll bar will get mounted to there. And this is just a piece of brass. Basically what I did was, in a collet, I turned down the center diameter here first, then I took it to the mill, I machined those surfaces flat, and then I spun that around and then machined it here again. So I wasn't about to try to mill over here with that turned down that skinny. That probably would have caught and tore it all up. So I did all the machining as close as I could to that end. So the next step is going to be to cut that off here, cut that off here, file those round, and then that can get attached to here, and then make another one. The sway bar itself, this is the kit piece. So again, that would mount on, I'm not going to use the kit piece, but the sway bar goes there. And the sway bar attaches to the kit right in there, like that. So I'm going to have to make the pivot bushings that then bolt onto there. So if I would have planned ahead, I would have done that before I soldered all of that together, because that would have been a lot easier to drill and tap here before I put all that on there. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. But for now, I just wanted to show you this before I cut it all apart so you could see how I did it. But let me get this done and the other one done, and then we'll come back and see how it's going after that. All right, so I painted the assemblies for each of the front wheels here. I got the little arm there that the roll bar connects to, or the sway bar, I guess, connects to. And of course that can move. And I got the steering one here. Now I tried making my own steering ball joint. It came out okay, but not good. It's too tight and it binds. I took a 2mm bolt and I rounded off the head with a Dremel tool and then pushed that into a piece of brass. I had drilled a hole in, tried to swedge it over. It kind of works. I just don't like it. It's too tight. So I found these on eBay, and these are pretty much the right size I need. And actually, when you look at the kit steering rack, which is basically just a tube with some holes at each end, that's actually, the kit one is actually a little bit bigger than what I came up with. So I think what I'm using there is perfectly fine, and got nice smooth movement here. And I basically just painted the whole thing, well, except for the brass part there. I basically painted the whole thing in a rattle can steel, and I think it looks all right. Once I'm done, I'll put some wash on it, put some black wash on it, pick up some of the details. But for now, I think it looks all right. To install it in the car, we can take a look at the other side. And so here we see this one installed in the car. Here you can see the travel of the suspension, the steering. And I basically have a brass rod going through, holding it in. And there's a nut in the front here and here, same on the bottom. To make those pieces, I basically just take a brass tube. The brass tube goes through these pieces, like that. And then, of course, the parts on the frame. So I need to cut that to length. That'll get cut about that long. And then to secure it in place, I take an 080 bolt and cut the head of it off. And then I'll put a washer on it. And then a nut. Just like that. And then what I'll do is I'll just put some CA on that end and put it into the tube that way, and then let the CA dry. Then I can take the nut and washer off. I can slip that through everything, and I'll do that on both ends. And so once that's slid through, holding the suspension on, then I can put the nut and washer back on, and that'll lock it all in place. So again, back to the kit part here, taking a look at the bottom, you can kind of see that a little bit better. So we got the nut and washer here. That brass shaft goes all the way through, then a nut and washer on the front. And do that top and bottom, and that's what holds that on there. So the next thing, well, I need to put the other side on, but the next step is to put the anti-roll bar in, and that goes in right there. And the first one I made, which is just it's 2mm spring steel wire, and the bushing is just heat shrink tubing. It's about 3 layers of heat shrink tubing. And the bracket that then goes over that is right there with the bolt that goes through. And the back side of the bolt, I drilled all the way through, because on the back side, the nut in the back side will hold a bracket that will hold the brake line. And but I made this a little bit too long. Now to connect the sway bar to that arm, right now I'm thinking, obviously these are way too long. That'll get cut down about halfway. But I'm thinking right now the whole length here is too long. But I won't know for sure until I get the other assembly installed. But to connect the arm to here, I machined I turned down a brass collar. It's just painted, but that's brass. And that goes over that. And that will then fit up like that. And then this screw, it'll lock on like that. And of course, that'll get cut to length. But like I said, I need to install this assembly, and then I can figure out the exact length for that. So let me do that. We'll get back to you, show you what that looks like. Okay, I have both sides installed. I've got them setting on spacers that are the same. And I also have a spacer on the back, so the back is stationary and fairly flat. So right now, all of the weight is on the bottom of each suspension, pushing them up the same. Now this one is as high as it can go. This one can go maybe a millimeter or two higher, just because, you know, it's difficult to scratch build your own ball joints and have them move exactly the same. So right now they're up evenly, and if I put on the kit shock absorber, if I put the kit shock absorber in place, you can see that actually right now that kit shock absorber won't fit, which means, well, that's a good thing actually, because that means that this is higher up than what the kit part was capable of doing. So that means I have more travel than what the kit did. If this was lower, then I might not be able to get the right ride height. I hope that makes sense. To me, it makes sense. I could be wrong, but I don't know. So right now, the car itself is as low as it can go, pretty much is what I'm saying. And it's lower than what the kit would have been. The next step is I want to get the sway bar in. That I made the sway bar a little bit too long. So if we put those, if we put the bushings where it would go there for the holder, this is not cooperating. So the sway bar needs to attach right about there to that vertical black rod, right there. But the bushing that I made out of heat shrink is too far inboard. It needs to be out right about there, but it can't because it's hitting here. Basically, what I'm trying to show you is that this is a little bit too long. So if we pull that out, this needs to be like, if we kept that arm here, this arm would have to be like right about here. So this is too long, so I need to remake this. But this is what the suspension is looking like so far, both of them installed. Let me get a new sway bar made, and I'll go ahead and install it and show you what that looks like. Now the pieces here that hold the sway bar on, as you can see, that's going to go like that. It goes like that. This is just brass bent to shape around the heat shrink, and got a bolt hole, and that goes there. And then again on the back side there will be a nut that'll hold a bracket for the brake line. I know on the real car there should be a bolt on the top and the bottom, but I kind of messed up a little bit. And I messed up way back when I made the frame, because this goes right there. And I kind of messed up when I made the frame, and I made this part right here a little too far up. But I was basing that off the kit parts. I did not realize that I was going to have to make a piece here with 2 bolts to go through there at the time, because I'm bad with planning ahead. So it was either cut this off and lower it, or just mount that with 1 bolt. And I went with what would be the easiest, and nobody's probably ever going to even notice that once it's all together and done. So yeah, the anti-sway bar brackets are going to be held in with a bolt here and not top and bottom. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. That really doesn't bother me that much. So like I said, let me get a new sway bar made. It's just 2mm spring steel is all it is. And again, that's just 3 pieces of heat shrink tubing to make the bushing. And let me get that made and installed, and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Okay, I've got both sides installed. Obviously the steering rod is not. And I also have installed the anti-sway bar right there. And so, as you can see, with the anti-sway bar in there, as you move one suspension, of course that's going to move the other one with it. So there's one side with the bracket and the bushing, and the bolt goes through. Got a nut on the back side. That bolt is still long. I need to cut that back. And on the back side there, I will eventually put a bracket to hold the brake line. And then you can see the other end here, where I got the bolt going through the tie rod or connector rod into the brass piece. The bolt threads into the brass, clamps onto the steel shaft there. So the little tie rod is free to pivot about the bolt as that moves. And then, of course, same thing on the other side. I scratched the paint a little bit, so I'm going to have to do some paint touch-up. And then here's the view on the bottom. But that is both side suspension almost done. The only thing left, well, for suspension, is the shock absorbers. Now, the kit shock absorber is right here. And if I put the kit shock absorber in, and we just pin that for now, notice that with it all the way up, with the shock all the way compressed, the kit shock absorber is fully compressed, which tells me I've got more or the same travel that the kit had, suspension-wise. And then, of course, all the way down. I don't know if that's as far down as the kit went, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if I'm getting full travel. But if I pull that apart too much further, it's going to fall apart. So I'm hoping that's enough. Now, the up travel, I think, is more important for getting the correct wheel height, or the correct ride height, I should say. Or hopefully, like, all the way extended is perfect. It's one of those things where I really won't know until I actually... I mean, I put a wheel on. You know, I put that wheel on, and I had it setting on the table. And that seemed a little bit high ride height-wise. So I think I'm okay. Because this is the one thing I was concerned about with scratch building all of my own suspension stuff, is ending up with the correct ride height when it was all done. So that was honestly something I was a little bit worried about. And with the wheel on, with it all the way down, the car looks a little bit high, which is good. You know, if it's riding about like that, and I get that much suspension with it on its wheels, I think that would be good. I'm really not a suspension expert. Half the stuff I'm talking about, I'm just kind of making up, so I really don't know. So for this video, I'm going to call this video done, because I feel like it's been plenty long enough. And I know you can't really tell it from the videos, but I have been working on this that you see right here, all the suspension and the tie rod stuff. I've been working on this for weeks, and mainly because I only come down to the garage a few hours a week. So, but the point is, I'm kind of getting tired of looking at this stuff. I'm kind of getting burnt out with the Jaguar suspension. So I need to take a break. I need to work on some other projects. I need to do some other stuff. So like I said, I'm going to call this one done for now. And I'm thinking the next video for this will be the shock absorbers and the steering rack. I need to make the steering rack that goes across there. And I would really love to be able to connect it to the actual steering. If that works out, that's great. If not, not that big a deal. We'll just kind of see how it works out. If I've got a straight shot from there to there for a steering shaft. I don't know. I hope so, but you never know. So anyways, that's next video. Shock absorbers and steering rack. And by the way, let me just show you the kit steering rack. I think I've showed you before, but this is the kit steering rack. I'm pretty sure I can do a lot better than that. So, so that's next video. So until next time, Thanks for watching.